Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to a beaten, battered down, bruised Huskies hockey podcast after this last weekend, both on the men's and the women's side. I'm Weldie sitting with Andrew, and it was a weekend to forget for Husky hockey in every stretch of every imagination. The men go down just in straight sets, 6-2, 7-2, and the women again go up to Amsoil, fail to score a goal, and their season over. Question marks kind of going around about what's going to happen after their season's done, and kind of what else he's planned for the future there. So let's start out with the men, and I guess I don't have a lot of words to start out. Like, once we get going, I'll have a lot to say, but like just the only thing I could say is ouch.
Yeah, oof.
What would be when you're making your crosswords? What other popular crosswordisms or crosswordese would you say for synonyms of oomph? Oof with the double O would probably actually be the answer.
I think oof. This is an oof weekend. We can like reverse engineer an acronym for that. Out of F's, like the swear word. I don't know. We can workshop that.
There we go.
But painful.
Well,
painful
the defense
weekend.
played like that they were out of F's for the weekend because as everything just kind of went off the rails, it went off the rails quickly. I mean, it was second period in Denver all over again, except prolonged what it felt like. And we'll get into that. Friday, Isaac Posh gets the start. Within the first, 10 plus minutes, we're down 3-0. And I don't know. It was it just kind of how they kind of came out of the gate. I just wasn't too happy with how they were playing. I thought things, again, it was just kind of the same story. I think things were just sloppy on our end. And everybody was off kind of on their own page. We weren't playing cohesively. And, it's just even more so demoralizing that Denver was down Carter King and Massimo Rizzo all weekend, and they were still able to give us, the worst home series beatdown since 04-05, I think it was. So it's just
not a good year. That's not a good team to compare to in Huskies history.
No.
I'm curious, who was that against? I was trying to rack my brain as far as they've been beaten badly at home. The 8-1 game against North Dakota about 10, 12 years ago now, it has always been a scar on my brain ever since that game. One of the 2 or 3 games I left early when I was a season ticket holder. So there's been one-offs like that, but as far as 2 games in a series, I can't remember 2 games that lopsided, that uncompetitive.
As far as, you can go back to, thanks, Mule Truck 67 on Twitter as well, who pointed out.
No.
04-05 were swept by Wisconsin, 6-0 and 4-2. But that 4-2 game even had an empty netter, so it still was 3-2.
We can that North Dakota series I just mentioned. Well, that wouldn't have been a sweep though. But I feel like there's got to be another pair of blowouts, like from that same season. Well, I guess that was at Denver. We're looking at home sweeps.
Yeah, we're looking at home ones.
Yeah, season in 05, you lost to Denver at home 5-2 and 6-1. I mean, that's a bit larger goal differential than that series.
And then the 03-04 season, which I like to recognize, which Billy Hengen, I think also. I don't know if you listened
I
to
got to
the
catch
Dump
up
and
to
Change.
that. I'm behind, but I saw that he was on the last one.
Yeah, it was. He did talk about how Craig Dahl lost the room a couple times, and I imagine it's that 03-04 season because they asked for questions on that, and I typed that in, and then Andrew and you came into my head, Andrew, and was like, "You got to throw up these softballs. You can't give them the hard ones." So I deleted that question, and then I've got a funny one about did anybody get injured taking a Brocklehurst slap shot in practice? He laughed pretty hard at that.
That's
so.
good. Good work.
But that 03-04 season at home against CC, we lost 7-1 and 5-2.
That's not close.
So, but as far as games when we were just not in it, I mean, you could argue the first or the second game, the first period, we had a really good first period until, the last 2 minutes, I think, is when that goal scored. And it was just like, you knew right away when they were coming down on that rush, and we didn't capitalize on anything because we make Matt Davis look like the second coming of Dominik Hasek.
Absolute God.
And like between Davis and Pearson, like we make these average goaltenders to be
below average by standard goalie metrics.
And put them on this huge pedestal when they face us. And it's just absolutely frustrating to just kind of see that happen. And they come down on a rush and they just score right away. And then after that, you're like, okay, that's how this game's going to go. And then it just, there was no punch really after that. And I know Brett Larson can kind of say what he wants after the post game and say that, we were trying to press to try to get back into it. And I don't know. I didn't really see it that way. I just thought that Denver just got a stranglehold. They're just, again, I've been pressing this, fast teams that are aggressive give the Huskies fits. And that's what Denver did. They were aggressive. They ran a high cycle that really confused us, and they kept getting open lanes, and they converted on all their rush chances, which I just feel like St. Cloud, we don't convert on a lot of rushes, and also we don't get a lot of really ugly looking goals in front of the net, and we don't have the snipers, not nearly enough snipers to try to pick every corner, and the end result is just these goalies just look like they're something that they're not, and it's just, I don't know, it was just so frustrating to watch us. And as they kept piling on goals on Friday, every time you just kind of had to chuckle. It's like, of course that one went in.
Yeah, this was an embarrassment. I mean, there's nothing else to describe it. There's no player, there's no unit on that team that excelled in any of these games. This is a great example of shots on goal being a deceiving metric. Every period this weekend, all 6 periods, St. Cloud outshot Denver. Aside from that first period on Saturday, there was never any other period where Denver was not clearly in control of that game. They were toying with the Huskies for most of the weekend. Getting off to that quick 3-goal lead in the first period on Friday dictated really the attitude of the rest of that weekend. From that point on, it was almost like they're playing rope-a-dope from a boxer. Like, yeah, you can pepper our below average goalie because you ain't going to score. You're not going to break through. And then, we'll convert on our chances. Great transition game that they're being able to play, create turnovers, create odd man rushes. I mean, that first goal on Saturday, that was a pure turnover, like at the top of the dots in the offensive zone. I don't know how many times Peart's had that. It's weird when he turns pucks over like that. He's like the rare defenseman who can cough up the puck in their own offensive zone and spring 3-on-1s the other way. I don't know how that works like that, but that's all that they needed. It's like once they scored that goal, you figured, okay, well, St. Cloud had the somewhat quasi control of that first period, but once they scored it, that's kind of the script that we were going to end up at. And I don't know. I mean, the first period, let's try to go a little sequentially, but
I went off the rails on that, so I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's probably best not to go by it blow by blow here. But
they all blend together at a certain point.
More broad strokes, reactions. But so you pull Posh. I mean, I can't say he was a huge problem. He was the main reason that those 3 goals went in on Friday. Keep in mind, too, there was a breakaway before the scoring even started, I think from Wright, that he had a nice save on.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the goals, again, they're all kind of blending together. Saturday, he was far worse in that, I thought, and didn't get pulled, which was a little surprising to me. But so Larson burns his timeout. Was that after the second goal allowed, I believe? And this is 5-6 minutes into the game. And then you give up the third goal and you pull Posh. And again, I don't think that was like you're being terrible. It's just, we kind of need another momentum spark. Yeah. That was kind of the reason for the pull, but it reeked of desperation because you already burned your timeout. And then now you're doing the other trick that you can do by making a goaltending change. It wasn't until there was a TV timeout about 7 minutes into the game, or 7 minutes left in the first period, where after that, St. Cloud at least was able to like control play, because the shots that they had prior to that were one and dones. Denver would just clean up the garbage and just trot down the ice again, set up shop. And towards that last part of the first period, St. Cloud seemed to at least gain their footing a little bit. And yeah, maybe the goalie change affected a little bit of momentum there, at least slowed Denver down a little bit. But that didn't last, clearly. And it just the willingness to do what they pleased without really any resistance from the Huskies. You know, it makes us look dumb. And we were looking forward to this series saying, yeah, I mean, that take out that second period on Friday out in Magnus and St. Cloud outplayed them. Look at that 5-on-5 action, 18-3 shot advantage that third period on Saturday out there. But that was the anomaly. We thought that we could skate with this team. We thought that this is a good matchup for the Huskies. Not even close. Denver's in another league altogether than St. Cloud. At least this weekend. I mean, you got to give them credit. Perhaps this was an anomaly weekend for them. Like they were playing above and beyond what they were actually capable of. But you have to think too, as you mentioned, Rizzo and King being out. Can't imagine how gruesome it would have been if those two players would have participated in these routes. And on Saturday, you had fourth line grinders I've never heard of put goals in. I think it was the last goal. The seventh one was a guy undresses 3 Huskies, goes in on a 1-on-3 and turns out to be a breakaway goal for a guy I've never effing heard of. Not one of their studs.
Third goal of the season, and we made him look like Mogilny out there.
Yeah, and so you couldn't do anything against the closer to bad than good goaltender in Matt Davis. Without plenty of chances, at least grade A's. I mean, there wasn't enough grade A's for the amount of shot advantage that they had. Most of those were sort of low quality shots that they were taking. But yeah, he made the little diving stop that Rowe did last weekend too, and it's just getting frustrating watching this. It's got some vibes of the women's team there where we were kind of praising, ran into a hot goalie this week. As you mentioned, yeah, we're running into those hot goalies at the .905 save percentage mark. It's like, it doesn't seem like the rest of the league thinks these are scalding hot goalies.
Right.
But I don't know. The best he can do is the season is not over. As much as that was as disheartening of a weekend as I've seen as a Huskies hockey fan, you're still somehow at 14th in the pairwise. So this can be the end of the season if you want it to be.
Yeah.
But you've got a chance to take care of business against a bad Duluth team this weekend. Take care of business. You've clinched a home spot in the playoffs. We talk about whether you feel like that's an advantage or not, considering they're sub 500 at home now this year.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still definitely a possibility. We'll see how this team responds. It's getting a little frustrating how inconsistent this team is from a week-to-week standpoint. And from the second half of the season, it's been more not this bad, but it's been more bad than good in the second half. But, you have the bad month of October, good months of November and December, bad month of January, up and down February. From week to week, I can't tell you if this is a team on the rise, on the skids. I just got to tune in on Friday to find out which version of this team I'll be getting this weekend against the Bulldogs. But I hope I don't get that version.
No, not at all. Yeah, talking home and away record. Home 7-8-3 at home, and 8-4-2 on the road. So this isn't a team built for Olympic ice, I guess, as much as we like to praise the surface, which again, like the falling down, I don't know, like, and then we had Lidke go down on Friday, who looked injured, which the way he was playing, at least that would have been an excuse for his bad play. But then I think on Saturday, Saltquist had a toe pick and he went down and he hit into the boards hard. So I don't know. I think there's something. Obviously we know, like, the ice conditions and how badly, that needs to be fixed at the Herb. So I don't know. There's something there, and that's obviously an aside, more so than an excuse for how, it's definitely not an excuse for how terrible the weekend was. But yeah, Denver being able to, dictate just everything. And, when they score on that first period late in the second game, I looked back, or I decided to look, and I was like, when's the last time we even had like a comeback? Like, what's our record? And I looked, when we're trailing at that time, we were 1-4-1 when trailing after one. We only won one game when we were down after the first period. And obviously now we're 1-5-1. And
that's not any different trailing after two.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I know that you had that Michigan game where he came back and tied that game. It wasn't a win, but it was a tie. What was the one comeback win when they were down after one?
Western Michigan. They were down 1-0 after the first.
The series so that would have been the series at Western.
At Western in November.
The first game, yeah. Okay.
Yep. So, I mean, and yeah, that was a 1-0 deficit. So, I mean, we can talk about how tenacious and there's no give up in this team. I mean, maybe you don't give up, but you definitely don't win. You definitely crawl back to, and then we obviously lay an egg in overtime a lot with the 3-on-3 clown hockey. So it's, you're talking about just the ups and downs. You don't know where this team's going to go. And I go back to what I said a few, maybe it was a month and a half ago. It's like, I vastly underestimated how good Spencer Meyer was. Like, now that he isn't on this squad, and I don't think it's that much Bushy and Trable. Maybe it is too, but there's just no pop to this defense. And the way Denver was just able to skate around us like we were standing still, it's a big concern. And that's something that really is going to hinder us, as we continue on this season. Officially, Brett Larson has not missed has only missed the NCAA once. So it's, we're sitting at 14. This pairwise right here, it's really fragile. And you're going to need a good showing here in Duluth, and then coming up in the playoffs, we're going to have some really strong competition, and I don't know who we want to face at that point. Obviously Duluth is kind of the easy answer, but Omaha isn't a team I want to face right now. They continue their streak. They've been playing incredibly well. We just saw Western Michigan, but anybody at home, I'm nervous about. And this is the first time I've been incredibly nervous about the team this year. I said a couple of weeks ago that, I was just going to kind of enjoy it the rest of the way because I don't really have any more expectations. That wasn't nerves. Like now I think we're getting to this point. We're kind of on that cusp right now. And I just, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know if there's there isn't an answer. I don't think this team has an answer. I don't think Brett has an answer. Because just how he sounded after, the post-game press conference on Saturday, he just sounded dejected and like he was just exhausted.
I didn't see that, and that's troubling to hear.
I don't know. Getting back, that was just my take out of it. He was just like, I don't know.
Again,
this
is the nail in the coffin only if you choose it to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, the playoffs, you're going to need to get help to finish second into the position of playing Duluth. But so maybe that's a long shot. You could always also look at it the other way is for this weekend, last weekend of the regular season and the first round of the playoffs, you're going to be facing two bottom half of the league teams. And so we're not playing Denver in the next 2 weekends. I feel like if you win that first round series, you might not even need to win a game at the X. You might be safe. You're not going to be like 100%. You might have to bite some nails on tournaments Saturday prior to the selection show on Sunday. But I think if you sweep this weekend and you win that first round series, it might actually help you because you would play either Omaha or Western. If you win those games, that will help you in the pairwise than beating Duluth because they're higher in the pairwise. If we're asking who I'd rather see, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I'd rather get Western. They're higher in pairwise, and you've played better against them this year. But
the only thing is we have the comparison against Western. So
you're going to need to win that series. You're going to need that series anyway. Yeah, so we don't worry about if you lose that comparison, you've lost the tournament chance.
Sure.
So that'll take care of itself. Something about Omaha. I think Western's a better team than Omaha, but I don't know. They haven't played so well against them this year, and I feel like this is a year like if Omaha. I don't want to be the team that Omaha finally beats to get to the X. You know what I mean? That would be more embarrassing than losing these two big games to Denver. I'll say that. So, which means we'll probably play Omaha then.
That's probably going to be the case.
And so if that's out of your control. I mean, obviously they don't need to be looking forward to playoff matchups. They need to focus on Duluth and getting themselves off the mat. And yeah, let's hope Larson, you're mentioning Spencer Meyer. I think another factor too, unquantifiable, of course, but his presence in the locker room as a captain, I think I thought of that effect this year. Not that I think Anhorn's not a leader, but they just have different styles. Whereas Anhorn's, I've made this comparison before. He's heavy metal. Whereas, Meyer was like Kenny G, kind of adult contempo, smooth, just calm, consistent, not too high, not too low. And sometimes that's the kind of presence you need to balance the ups and downs of a season. With Anhorn, I feel like when this team's gone poorly this year, he's trying to kind of overcompensate. He's kind of chicken with his head cut off at times. And I think that might rub off on the rest of the team as him being in that captain leadership too. And so saying if Larson's despondent after this weekend, I hope someone is in that locker room, one of the players, a group of players at least, that the leadership group, if they're able to bring the team back together, wash this one off of them, and then focus the task at hand to this weekend. Like I said, I'm optimistic from the sense that it's still definitely possible.
Yeah.
But I'm not confident that you're going to sweep Duluth. I don't care how bad there's always just something about Duluth. It's just, you can't just assume you're going to walk into Amsoil and take 6 points. And so I don't feel super confident about that prospect of getting 6 points this weekend. But it's certainly doable. It's just, again, adversity happens to every team. What you do to respond to that is what separates the winners from the losers. So we're going to see a lot from this team. I don't know. We're talking about Posh getting pulled, and then Bassie plays the rest of that game, who played all right. I was kind of concerned that maybe he was going to start the game on Saturday because of him playing decently in, albeit mostly garbage time on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But credit again to Larson showing the confidence in Posh, coming back to him. But leaving him out to dry for all 7 of those goals, I don't know how that affected his confidence. And I'm at another point now. We thought we got it solved after he had the good weekend against Western. I don't know who to expect in net on Friday in Duluth. I was almost at the third period on Friday or on Saturday. I'm just like, put Gray in there. Just do something. We actually could kind of use the kind of cocaine energy that Gray has at that point. And so
chase the high of Gray.
But perhaps that's another desperation move that's not going to lead to any fruitful success. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws on how to turn this around. But again, if the season ended today, you'd be in the field. So the season's not over. And maybe that's best that we just don't go super in depth in this weekend. What else is there to say? If you love 2-on-1s and giving up goals, this was a great weekend for you. Yeah. But not a ton else to say other than, as you started the show with, oof, because that one hurt.
Do you know any Kenny G songs?
I don't think any of them really have titles.
You're right. It's just saxophone playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was just kind of thinking, I was like, I don't know a Kenny G song. Like, I know a Jethro Tull song.
Sure. Locomotive Breath.
Yeah.
Aqualung.
Flautist? Flautist. I've heard of
why that's the name, but they add an A in there.
And that, well, I mean, the big thing that I'm going to be looking forward to here coming out to next weekend is just how they respond. It'll be interesting to see what kind of practice that the Huskies are going to have this week, and then how they're going to come out in Amsoil. I don't think we've swept there since 2019. I think I saw. Oh no, we did in 21. 1-0 victory and a 4-3 win.
I'm not sure if I believe they swept a full 6-point sweep. Did it up there the first year of the NCHC because I was there. I remember it. But I think that's the only time that they've done it at Amsoil, a clean sweep. It's rare.
God,
and in recent years,
Duluth, these guys so many times.
Right, and Duluth has generally owned the series at Amsoil.
Yeah.
Getting swept there last year, that was actually the last full 0-point weekend for the Huskies. I had to look that up. They were swept at Mankato earlier this year, but they did get a point for an overtime loss, one of those. So the last 0-point weekend was last year, the first weekend without Anhorn, when he went up there. That's the start of that slide.
That's right.
Do you remember the last 0-point weekend at home?
Ooh. I do not.
It was that 1920 year, the one non-NCAA year for Larson, the home sweep to CC. Pretty bad CC team that year too, but that was early in the year, right. And it was that one was one of those ones where they had been struggling, and I think that was, I don't know if they had played Princeton yet. They lost to them and tied them. You had the 2 ties to Bemidji, the weird series up in northern Michigan. But it was a weird year. But then when that weekend played out, you're like, okay, this is going to be a rebuilding year. And so, because CC didn't turn out to have a very good year that year. So it's been almost 5 years. That was the fall of 2019 that happened. So traditionally is something very difficult for opponents to do, but Denver didn't seem to have any problems doing it this weekend. And again, as you mentioned, with a shorthanded roster at that, let me give you some idea of the kind of depth that they have.
Denver has.
Thompson, very good player. Matica, he's going to be a pain, I think, for.
Yeah, I'm already sick of him. I want him to just leave. Maybe he'll go to the transfer portal. Can I pray for that?
Round 3 draft pick for the Coyotes. So
there we go.
He might be for
Coyotes
the pros before he goes in the transfer portal. Sam Harris with a couple of goals, which is weird. What
were your thoughts on Carle challenging in a 6-0 game?
I was listening to the student broadcast, and they're like sputtering in rage about that. It's so cold-blooded and such a heel move.
Such a heel move.
I almost admire it.
Oh, God, you NWO fan.
It's like I said,
life.
They were toying with St. Cloud to the very end, including that.
Why not?
He did this in Denver too, in that 5-1 game where he
the 5-1 game.
He asked them to review a major.
Mm-hmm.
From his perspective, like, why not? Yeah, I want to. I'm not going to use this timeout. That you don't get to carry. You don't get to bring it with you. And yeah, for being upset, like the broadcasters were. Yeah, if you don't want to be upset by being shown up by your opposing coach at home in a 6-0 game, here's a hint: don't be down 6-0 at home. Then you don't get embarrassed like that. You got to eat it. That's what Carles want to do. And again, the only thing St. Cloud can do positively from that is to gain some sort of, anger and emotion. And the next time you play them, you want to stick it to them. If that's the ultimate upshot, that's what the Huskies can use. If not, Carles is just saying, yeah, well, we had a great weekend. Thanks for the hospitality. And I'm glad that I could milk every single second out of you guys. And hey, he's got the national title. He's got a World Junior Gold on his resume, and he's younger than I am. So he can do what he wants.
I'm probably in the same boat as the sportscasters, the announcers were. I was like, Carle would is what I tweeted. I was like, of course he would. Like, of course. I mean, I think it's a heel. It definitely is a heel move. Does he have every right to do it? Of course he does. But at the same time, I'm like, just get this game over with. Just put us out of our misery.
That's what they were saying too. They're like, people work 9 to 5 jobs. It's like, it's not David Carle's job to do that, to make your day go smoothly. He's there to win the game. If he wants to get hatred for that, all the better.
Well, he's up to number 1 right now on my most hated NCHC power rankings coaches.
I'm not going to disagree with that, but at the same time, if you're indignant about this weekend, save your indignation for how the Huskies played rather than.
I could be indignant about multiple things. This isn't an and or thing. This is an and thing. Like this is, or an either or thing. This is an and.
Sure. Well, I see where you're coming from. It was a dickish move. I'll grant that, but I am not all that angry about having to watch 3 more minutes of nothingness. We already sat through 10
of an NCHC review, which is the worst type of review in college hockey.
But not the worst kind of stoppage, because I would put the NCHC review above the 10-minute. Let's turn the fire alarms off. That was the PA announcer. I don't know if Jason Bryant gets to pick the music there, but that was their time to shine with the.
And they
didn't start the fire and.
Yep. And Ring of Fire.
There was one burning down the house.
I mean,
yep. They could have gone for a couple of more. What would have been your next song? I'd say Fire by the Pointer Sisters. It's a good one. Fire. It's a good. I think it's a cover from like a 60s song, but my mom was a big Pointer Sisters fan. We had a tape in the Astrovan growing up that we burned that tape out. Yeah.
Burn that tape up?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, Burn by Usher, I think would be on the list. I'm sorry.
That would probably be more likely than the Pointer Sisters because you are a little bit more hip than I am.
Everybody who knows me is like, yep, that's a hip dude right there. How you do, fellow kiddos? And then I think didn't Springsteen have a Fire
I'm on
song?
Fire. Yep,
yeah,
that's a good one. That's more of like it's a good song, but it's not like a stadium song. It's not like a rock, like jock rock. It's more in the Kenny G kind of mellow out kind of. It's a good one though.
Fair enough. Man, I got on that sidetrack and now I brought up the point that the owner of the press was probably there at the game as well. So he was probably at the game. Was like, hey, I got a way to solve this problem, guys. You're getting torched on the ice. Let's.
The only problem with that joke is that he can't be at the arena because he's in jail.
He's in jail. Technicalities. He got out on work release. He works at the Herb.
For the sake of humor, it's a good one. You got me. That was solid.
So if you were, I mean, I guess let's put a bow on this turd sandwich. You got a pal?
Yeah, we've had series where I know I did it once, you did it once, where it's a protest refusal. And I think when I did it, you're like, oh come on,
I did
do the bit. And then when you did it, I did the oh come on, pick a player. It wasn't that bad of a weekend. If there's any weekend to have a protest POW and non-POW, this is the
mine is Graysdale Monaco. Graysdale Monaco is my POW.
Second that emotion. Yes.
So, I guess in all seriousness, I guess it would go to Gross. He had a goal and an assist, so that's points, I guess.
I refuse.
I don't blame you. We did get a prop bet though, with Mason Sahlquist getting his 5th goal. So over 4.5. The over hit.
I must not have taken that over.
I don't remember.
We got to go back to that. You got to do that research, and then I got to go back because next week we'll have the NCHC final standings. We'll have to go back to those predictions, as well as when the field's revealed.
I really don't want to.
We'll go back and compare because we did 2 pick the field segments, one in October and one in January. We could kind of count up and tally up our good predictions there or bad predictions. So
we do have NCHC tournament teams. The over under was 3.5. Alex and I were under. You and Brian were over, and over's probably
looking better than under.
Probably looking better right now,
but they're both still in play. Yeah, maybe we can. I mean, we've really melded all the analysis from the recap to the Duluth preview.
I mean, I guess Duluth's been a dumpster fire. Like Huskies just need me to prove that they want to be in the tournament. Is kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, and we know we're definitely, as you mentioned, played this team a ton over the last couple of years. It's not like we're not familiar with these players. I mean, they've got some freshmen on the team that you don't have a ton of experience with, but in net, we've seen Thiessen and Stayskal a fair amount over the years. Both of them sub 90% save percentages, both north of 3 goals against average. stop me if you've heard this before, not very good goalies. See if the Huskies can pounce on that. We know Ben Steves very well.
Annoyingly well.
And he plays very well against the Huskies. I mean, with Duluth especially, because aside from Steves, your guy Gelatin. I think it's Gallatin.
Galatinin.
Yeah,
Galatinin.
The Battlestar Gallatin. And he's a
hey,
he's from
don't spoil that for me.
Battlestar Galactica?
Yep, I've
never seen an episode of it. So
okay, I just started season 5. I don't know who the last couple of Cylons are, so
I don't know.
Nobody spoil that for me. Okay,
but yeah, Jello's a defenseman, so I mean they don't have another forward above 20 points. And with Steves, he's got 22 goals, 12 of those on the power play. So again, hugely critical that they keep this team to limit their power play chances, and particularly Steves on the power play.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to go on a soapbox quick. Okay, when you're on the power play and you shoot it into somebody's skate and they go down, don't move the puck to the other side of the ice. It was absolutely infuriating. Because I think it was the second period power play on
Friday.
Was it Fridays or Saturdays?
Again, they're all blending together. That was one of the few ones that we texted back and forth about. We usually don't do that.
So I guess
it was the second
Saturday
on Friday.
Okay. Yes, that's right. Because it
was still 3-0. We're kind of like looking maybe they're going to get back in the game.
So Ingram rips the wrist shot from the sideboard, and it gets the Denver player right in this right in the the padding of the skate, which hurts like a SOB. He goes down. Ingram gets the puck back, moves it over to Anhorn. Ingram gets into position with the Denver player still down and hobbling. Anhorn decides to move it back or to the other side of the ice with healthy Denver players who passed it back to Anhorn, who still had a chance to get it to Ingram, who passed it back.
At that point, you're on like a 5-on-3.5.
And then it's like,
you go away from that weak spot.
It's like if there's a guy with a broken stick, you go after the guy that doesn't have his stick. You go after the guy who's down on the ice because you have the advantage, even more so of an advantage there. And then you go back, and then I think we finally tried to get it to Ingram, but by that time we were trying to get it like through 3 guys to try to feather a pass there. Denver picks it up and clears it. And it's just like, so infuriating to see that power play unfold the way it did, especially after Anhorn had to have known that defender went down and was out of the play. It was so annoying to watch, and
you're down 3-0 too. It'd be less offensive. Well, we want more offensive in the other sense. You get what I'm saying, but it'd be less frustrating
offensive,
if this was
offensive.
If this was a scoreless game and whatever. You're down 3. You gotta get on the board here. At that point too, Denver takes that penalty early in the second period, and they got up 3-0 very quickly on Duluth a couple of weeks ago. Duluth ended up getting back in that game to 3-2, and making a game out of it. This game went the other way than that. You never really got back into the game. 4-1 and then 5-2, but it really wasn't in doubt there at the end, and even more so in the Saturday game. Closer in the first period, but then it just
St. Cloud can't defend a rush, so it didn't matter.
Reiners and Wiley, I'll single them out as being especially bad this weekend. Reiners, I have to guess there was some injury lingering concerns with him, because he has not been the same player since returning right around the halfway point of the year. He's looked slow. He's looked timid. He's been beaten badly on a lot of plays. Falk as well.
I thought was just a flat out liability.
They're really, like I said, there was no player. I mean, you said Gross is all right. Rogers had some decent plays, but overall the forwards just didn't do enough. But the defense, you can't even single out one individual there that had like an above average weekend. I don't think. It was a real horror show from that. And Posh and Bassey, for that matter, they didn't really stand out either. It just was a rotten egg all around. But especially some of those defensive pairings, really leaking some oil there, and it was showing.
Yeah, I thought Falk. I thought he was a liability out there, and I thought Lidke too had a bad weekend. He had a couple of really bad turnovers. So, I mean, again, just all bad. But I wanted to go back to that power play because that just infuriated me.
Yeah, it was one of those, you can encapsulate how the weekend went in certain, events in the weekend. That was one of them. Where another was that couple of those flurries where they were at least moving the puck with some relative ease around the zone, and then you just get stoned by Matt Davis. I feel bad for Matt Davis because I just got nothing good to say about him, but it's just like he seems to save the best for the Huskies. Either that or it's just the Huskies are failing to capitalize on these golden opportunities. And it's just frustrating. You got Sam Harris, who started the year, I mean, he's a decent prospect for them, and he's been elevated to a higher role here of late since Rizzo's been out. But, when the Huskies first saw him this year, he only had 5 points in season at that point. He was looking like a star player in that first period for them. And I'll say, too, among intellectual, atheist, polemic philosophers, I'll take Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins over Sam Harris. But if anyone has
Wasn't he the original host of the Family Feud?
I would love to see Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawson. Oh, that's good. That's like a Family Guy bit. That should, like, someone gets Richard Dawkins as the host of Family Feud. Oh, that would be good.
That would be good for like 4 people. 4 people would find that hysterical.
But that's the thing about Family Guy. Like I was reminded a couple of weeks ago that they had a joke, a pun on the author W. Somerset Maugham. Like, hey, Dad, Mom's calling, and he's like, I hope it's not Somerset Maugham. I hope it's not Somerset Maugham. No one's gonna get that reference who went to like a college literature course. But that's the thing about Family Guy. It's great. Christopher Hitchens is great though. He's the guy. He is the biggest hater of Mother Teresa. If you ever want to read some Mother Teresa hatred, he wrote at least one book, if not multiple. So check it out. Some great stuff.
Just a slam book.
He thought she was a fraud who was exploiting the poor for her own good. And that's literally basically his argument. So it's interesting. It's like one of those guys. If you, I don't really care about the substance of the argument. If at least you make a coherent argument, I'll at least go along with you. But yeah, less of a fan of Sam Harris, the hockey player. Well, I guess I'm not a huge fan of the philosopher either. But
who was your favorite Family Feud host? Because you had Richard Dawkins.
I'm going to go Ray Combs.
You got Ray Combs.
Richard
Karn.
Steve Harvey.
And
then also Jay Peterman did it. The guy that played Peterman. I can never remember his name.
Who's Bobby's World? What was his voice? Oh, this is going to bug me. Louis Anderson.
Oh, yeah. From Minnesota.
Anderson. Yep.
Yeah. I think he died.
He did.
Yeah, there's been a few of them.
Maybe that'll be an off season. We can rank the.
I've always had
Family Feud host.
Ray Combs. I mean, he'd make a great biopic. Ray Combs. He was like a stand-up comic. Then he gets that gig, and he ended up killing himself. He was in a terrible car accident, despondent at the end of his life. It's a very sad story, but I think he's kind of got a fascinating story. Would be a good for like a biopic treatment. Richard Karn too would make for a great biopic. Good old Al Borland.
Al Borland.
Yeah, that's whoever we get the best fashion or costume designer who works in plaid. That would be the Richard Karn story. So, all right, well, we're off in the ditch now. So at least we can laugh about something from this weekend, or at least get some bits out of it.
I mean, they clearly set it up now with all the puns for Steve Harvey that it's just going to end up being dirty, but it's a good half hour to watch a Steve Harvey.
Is he still hosting?
I think so.
It's been a bit.
At least there's so many reruns on Game Show Network, and I think Pluto even has like a Family Feud channel. You can probably just watch it anytime. So, but anyway, so this is a question, but I might as well kind of go now since we're still kind of talking about the grossness of this weekend. Heath did have a question. It was in a way that he can explain it. How is it that knowledgeable hockey fans just complain about Husky hockey, but fail to recognize that Denver is a very good team? Shrug emoji.
I don't have any issue with that. I feel like I've been equally critical of the Huskies' poor play, but also saying Denver's just playing better. And in a different league than this team.
I think that's another. It's not an either or. It's definitely a combination. It's a cocktail.
I mean, you can look at Denver in an aspirational sense. You'd hope to be able to build a roster like that where their third line is outpacing your top line, and a third line considering
we did have
two of the top scorers.
We did have that, and we had a goalie, and we still lost in the first round. That's
right.
What ticks me off.
Yeah, do you see this Denver team, who's not going to be the number one overall seed, mind you?
Correct.
But do you see them playing RIT and losing in the first round? Not even close. They beat them by 4. So it's just a team that takes care of business in a way that, it's impressive, but doesn't make the sting hurt any less from the Husky standpoint either.
No.
This is just a pair of results that we're not used to seeing on home ice on senior night too. It's just, at least he clinched the playoffs. He'll have some more home games, but as you said, maybe it's a blessing not a blessing.
What year was it where we had a senior night and I think we played against Michigan Tech?
That would have been the first Frozen 4 year. I think you could have. Was that it? Yeah, that was. We referenced this not too long ago because that was coming off the weekend where they had lost to CC, and that was prior to just a month ago, the last time CC had beaten St. Cloud in the Springs. And I think I mentioned it there. Like you could have you could have won the McNaughton if you would have beaten Michigan Tech on that Saturday. And what I thought is like, they didn't. And I thought that was the last weekend of the year, but no, they had to go out to Wisconsin the week after. Mm-hmm. They played in the Dane Coliseum because the Kohl Center was booked for basketball, I think I'm going to say.
Yep.
But they beat Wisconsin on Friday there to clinch the tie. And then you had Patolini's van, Gophers and Bemidji.
That's right. And then I actually went down. We drove to Madison, but we got a late start on Saturday. We didn't get there until the end of the first period. But at the Dane County, like, you could drink there. So, but they had like a beer garden on like a different level. So we actually just went right down to the beer. So we actually beat the rush to the beer garden, which actually worked out a little bit in our favor. And then we got hammered. I had like so many old fashions at the Old Fashioned and then State Street, and Madison's a good time. That's for sure.
Was that would have been that your last time there? Probably.
That was my last time there.
I never went to a game there. You've been to games at both the Kohl Center and Dane Coliseum, Dane County Coliseum. I've been to Madison probably a dozen times because my brother went there. but I just never went to a hockey game there.
Oh, really?
Weird. So yeah, getting back to your disastrous senior nights, that was definitely a memorable one.
Yeah,
And
that was
one too.
That was a 5-1 loss to Michigan Tech, who was, shocker, not very good that year.
Maybe our younger fans are less aware of, like, prior to like 6-7 years ago, Tech was always last place or second. There was them in Anchorage fighting it out for last place every year in the WCHA.
Some of the best fans, though. They
would always come with the
they would always
overalls, whatever the stripes.
They'll always cheer, and they would always partake in the bars afterwards.
They would always go to the Final Five too, even if Tech wasn't there. Is that right? Or would that? Yeah, because they didn't make it there often. No. But good, dedicated fan base for sure.
Yeah, but I just remember that because we were down 3 goals in the first 5 minutes of that senior night.
Yeah, it's not how it's supposed to work on senior night.
Not normally. Yeah, Faringer got lit up.
I guess that's weird because I didn't. I'm just putting it together now. But Bassey being a senior, not getting the start on senior night,
not getting the start. Yeah,
it's kind of a message there. If that gives us any hint as to who's starting on Friday, I'm not sure if it should, but I don't know. What do you think about the goaltending? I made my comment on it a little bit ago. Who would you expect to be the starter on Friday if you had to guess?
Gray. Let's get let's just pull out all the stops at this point.
Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear is his new name.
Cocaine Bear Gray. We've seen him in one game, and he gets the nickname of Cocaine Bear.
I think he deserved it.
He did after that. That's true. So, I mean, I would rather see Posh. I think he goes Bassey though. I think he gives Bassey the weekend.
You think he does?
I think he does.
To be different, I'll say he goes with Posh. If he's willing to stick with him, bring him back on Saturday on senior night for Bassey, and then keep him in there for all 7 goals, maybe that gives me a sign that he's confident in Posh. I don't know. My confidence level in Posh has dipped. I'll put it that way after this weekend. But we'll see how that develops.
I might as well finish off questions right now. Dan Jacobson, do you have a preference in a first round opponent?
Yeah, so I wanted to level set a little bit looking forward, like playoff scenarios and what the standings look like. We mentioned they have clinched a home ice spot. But so
better or worse?
Third place right now, 2 points behind Denver for second, 2 points ahead of CC for fourth, who's in fourth. And of course, Denver and CC play a home and home this weekend. And they're 6 points ahead of Omaha for fifth. So in theory, Omaha could sweep their series against North Dakota. Unlikely, but they could do that. And if St. Cloud gets swept, they would be tied. However, reading the tiebreakers head-to-head, if the two teams have played both a home and a road series, which Omaha and St. Cloud have, the first tiebreaker is head-to-head, and it's regulation head-to-head. So even though they have 6 points apiece against them in the season series, St. Cloud has the only regulation win among those 4 games. And so they would win the tiebreaker over Omaha there. So by that logic, they can finish no lower than fourth. And they can still finish second or fourth, depending on their results against Duluth and Denver and CC's results in their series. Doing some math before the show, if St. Cloud wins, or if they get 3 points this weekend, that clinches at least third place, meaning CC cannot hop them. Or CC could hop them if they sweep Denver, but if that happened, St. Cloud would also hop Denver, because that would assume Denver gets swept. So with 3 points, you would hop Denver. I know this is a little confusing, but just to try to make it simple here, 3 points clinches at least third. And getting into the scenarios of getting into second place really kind of depend. You need to have at least 1 win plus in order to get second place back into play. So that would mean basically 2 wins, like one being in overtime at least, if not 2 regulation wins. And then Denver also losing at least 1 game this weekend, which, CC in Denver, CC's playing well, as we know. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but really to put that into play, which, I mean, if the teams that you're going to face are realistically Omaha, Western, and Duluth, again, there is mathematical possibility that Omaha could hop CC. So I guess CC would still be a possibility to play in the first round. But really, I think that's a remote chance. It's really between Omaha, Western, and Duluth. Of those 3 teams, yeah, I'd clearly like to play Duluth because they're the worst of those teams. But like I said, there's not the upside of having to play Omaha and Western is that they're tougher teams. It does better for your pairwise, both from beating those teams, and then if you do have to go to 3 games to beat that team, a loss to them won't kill you as much as a loss to Duluth would. So I would prefer to play Western. I've said it before. We've beaten them 3 times this year. You've handled them better than Omaha has, and I don't want the opportunity of letting Omaha beat them and going to the X for the first time ever. So who do you, I mean, obviously Duluth would be my preference, but I think that it's more likely to be either Omaha and Western, and between those teams, I'd rather play Western. What about you?
I agree. And especially because of how hot Omaha has been as of late. They've won their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of their last 10, and 2 more of those were shootout wins. So, I mean, they're
they're still under 500. They're 6-8-8. This got like a Dartmouth kind of year going on in the NCHC. 8 overtime wins, 2 of those shootout wins, but then 6 overtime wins, and no overtime or shootout losses. So I mean, they've really been, but that's kind of the reason that they're still outside the pairwise gate, is because so many of their points have been and results, favorable results, have been in overtime, which is not as good as a regulation win, obviously. So they're kind of like CC in that regard, where they've just relied on a lot of overtime results to prop them up in the standings.
Yep. They're 14-1 in 1-goal games, which is just absolutely insane.
And typically not all that sustainable. Like I said before, I would say Western's the better team over them in Omaha. It's just, I don't know, for some dumb reason I'm scared of Omaha, which I never am, but for some reason I am. This
You're like the Omaha hater of this podcast.
I am. I do hate Omaha, but so it seems like we're on the same page there. Yeah. And we should mention too, North Dakota wrapped up Penrose, so that's officially gone. I wonder what they're still fighting for a 1 seed overall, so I don't expect them to take this weekend off against Omaha, but maybe a little less to play for in that regard. Maybe could just use that as like a tune-up for the playoffs. It'll mean more for Omaha than it will for
the thing. I think they have the most reason to fight is that Omaha's the host of the Sioux Falls Regional. So
that's a good point.
So like you would want to try to knock them out, because otherwise, the committee's going to be less likely to put North Dakota and Omaha matching up as the 1-4.
Well, and they wouldn't be able to do that anyway, because it'd be an interconference game.
The committee can do whatever they want.
I
think there's a clause in there that says we would like to.
There is a clause that says if a conference has more than half of the teams in a league in the field, they can do an interconference game in the first round.
I thought it was even before that was still kind of grayly worded.
I mean, that's the scenario we had in the Wisconsin year, the Wisconsin rule year, because that year that Wisconsin got in with the under 500 record, they played Denver in the first round because the WCHA had 6 teams in that year. And that was the rationale. I don't think it's happened since then where they've put an interconference matchup in the first round of the NCAAs. And then they did also institute the Wisconsin rule. I know we haven't had too much of an opportunity to play that sounder, so Wisconsin rule update. Go Packers.
Yep, and there it is. So
yeah, I certainly going to be an intriguing game there, and from that battle for 5th and 6th.
Just to put a bow on that as well, is that you don't want to put the committee in, like, you're not going to put North Dakota in the same, with the interconference, the same with the host. Then North Dakota isn't going to be able to travel to Sioux Falls. They're going to have to go out to.
They would put him in
Providence.
They would put him in Lindenwood then, probably.
Oh, Lindenwood.
So they would just drive down to St. Louis rather than drive down to Sioux Falls, which probably could happen.
Yeah, that's true.
But again, we'll cross
5
that
and
bridge
6
if it gets to there. Yeah, I mean, more importantly, that Omaha series, because Western's got Miami at home this weekend. So, I mean, obviously they've got the scheduled advantage, them playing at home against Omaha or against Miami versus Omaha playing North Dakota at home. So, I mean, with Western 3 points behind Omaha and Western having the tiebreaker over Omaha because of their head-to-head results this year, you'd like to think like Western sweeps and Omaha gets a split. That would tie them in the standings, and Western would break the tiebreaker with their head-to-head. Like, that seems like a reasonable prediction. Keep in mind, though, Miami's lone conference win this year came against Western. And we've mentioned St. Cloud's struggles this year at home. Western also better road team than a home team, just at 9-7 at Lawson. So it's not out of the realm possibility there. Miami played Omaha fairly tight this weekend, 2 1-goal games there. 2 of those, 14 1-goal wins for the Mavericks this year. It's, I mean, it'll be an interesting weekend. The last weekend of the year, you always get some weird results. I remember, I don't think it wouldn't have been senior night, but another one of these senior weekend fails at home. It was, I think it was 16, 17. I think it was in the first iteration of the podcast where I think St. Cloud had a chance to finish. Yeah, because that was the year they were 5th and went to Grand Forks. But they played another terrible CC team at home, and they laid a complete egg on Friday. And that was their last home series of the regular season that year. That was another one. I remember we came on the show and we were just disgusted. Similar to this weekend too. So the last weekend of the year, you can't put anything out of the realm of possibility. And so we'll see how it all shakes out. But really, we just got first place and last place and 7th. Duluth is locked into 7th. And then first and last, but everything else, 2 to 6, is all up for grabs. And so it'll be interesting how it all shakes out.
Kind of around men's, all of the regular season championships have been decided. Obviously, we already touched on North Dakota and the NCHC. Michigan State takes the Big Ten crown, which is a surprise. Which is a bigger surprise, that or Bemidji getting the CCHA?
It's actually a good question.
I think I would go Michigan State.
I would say Michigan State too, just
because
it's a better league.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought Bemidji's going to clinch that with 2 shutouts against Mankato.
Yeah.
6-0 shutout in the Friday game to clinch the conference championship. I did not have that on my bingo card, though. Bemidji winning the CCHA, even in a terrible year for the CCHA. Didn't see that.
Obviously, Quinnipiac and the ECAC. Obviously, Boston College and Hockey East. And RIT and Atlantic Hockey fends off Sacred Heart, I'll say.
And still one more weekend of conference play in Hockey East. BC has clinched the regular season title, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But still some regular season games. So their playoffs, like the NCHC, starts next weekend. Everyone else will be in playoffs. I mean, Atlantic Hockey had their little first round play-in games this last weekend. So, I mean, they're already in playoffs. They have they're playing best of threes this weekend and next weekend. They only play the single one-offs in the championship game.
I like it.
So it's a grinder to win that Atlantic hockey. And I'd like to say you got AIC at 5th, so they got to go to Air Force. They got to win that series. Then they got to probably go on the road to win another series and then win the title game. But I'm rooting for that because it's chaos. Because if they are the co-hosts of the Springfield Regional with UMass would be in the field if the season ended today. And as it's like they're 12th right now in pairwise, UMass is. So, 3 seed. Can you imagine if UMass and AIC both make the tournament? I mean, the rule is a host automatically goes to the host regional that they're hosting.
Yeah.
But it's possible if they're a 3 and a 4, they would both go. But what if UMass is also a 4 seed?
It's also a 4.
And someone's got to go. So I don't think that's ever been in, like, there's been co-hosted regionals, but not.
No way that's ever happened. Oh, I want that. I want that so bad. I've never wanted anything more in my life. Oh my gosh.
I actually wouldn't mind.
The committee's head will explode if they can't keep these seating bans. Because they have to. It's like a itch that they have. It's like these bans are sacred. We got to have the 3s and the 4s, but they're 2 4s and it just airs out and you get the blue screen.
I think you'd have problems with a 3 and a 4 too if it'd be easier because they could both be there, but then that would likely present.
I want it.
I was gonna say, well, because then one of the Boston teams would have to go there then. But you're playing ASC, I suppose. It'd be like, what if UMass was the 4 seed, and then that would be chaos because the Boston teams again were getting the interconference matchups in the first round. Then you got the whole Providence, which I've predicted all year long.
Yes.
So
I want all of this to happen. I don't care what happens now with SCSU. This is my white whale. This is my Moby Dick.
I'm just gonna say that the last 2 years since we've resurrected the show, I perfectly nailed the field because I'll do a little mini show.
You do the mini show, which
I
always look forward to. I've
completely nailed it the last 2 years, but this year might be a little trickier. It's looking like there's going to be some more difficult movement,
chaos
to be placed in the brackets.
The gif of Elmo in the fire with the chaos.
He didn't start the fire.
We didn't start the fire. The owner of the press did. Anything else kind of piqued your interest going around the men's side before we talk about the Huskies?
I mean, again, considering a thorough shellacking at the hands of Denver and 2 losses, I would have thought that you'd been dropped lower than 14th from St. Cloud's perspective. You can attribute that staying afloat to the fact that Western got swept at North Dakota, which wasn't terribly surprising. Cornell dropping a home game to Union, which really hurt them.
It was I think nearly everyone in our band also lost, so that definitely helped.
Well, UMass had to go to overtime to beat Lowell, which, we know the difference between overtime versus regulation wins. Again, you actually 2 overtime wins this weekend against a bad Lowell team. Just look at UMass. I think we want them. We're officially on the record. We really want them to make the tournament now for chaos purposes.
Now we do. Yeah.
But
I didn't until now.
They're a team that all year, I was even saying this in October when I picked them to be in the field, like their metrics were not looking great for them. They are like tiptoeing through the minefield here with all these 1 goal sneaking out the back door kind of wins, and they very well could make the tournament. They're at Maine this weekend, kind of a reeling Maine team.
Mm-hmm.
So they certainly are better than I haven't pulled up the metric or matrix today, but bet you they're at 60-70%. What's UMass at?
CHN pairwise probability matrix.
Oh, on the
matrix. I thought you were looking at it, but
no, I was just going to bring up that Providence and Merrimack. Providence lost to Merrimack on Friday, so that definitely helps too. And even on Thursday, because that was a Thursday Friday game, I watched that Thursday game And Providence had to get a late goal to win that game. So Merrimack really had them on the ropes on both.
Yeah, UMass right now, the Matrix 87%. They got Providence at 78. Then we got CC at 68, Michigan at 69. The Michigan game, so they were up 3-0 in the first period on the Gophers. The Gophers ended up scoring 5 goals on Michigan in the third period. So when that game was in overtime, I'm kind of playing around with the predictor, and I'm assuming we want Michigan to lose, right? Because they're right around the same area as the Huskies are. But as it turned out, I'm like, oh no, we want Michigan to win, because if Minnesota would have won in overtime, that would have dropped, for some reason, that would have dropped St. Cloud out of the top. I think it would have dropped them to 15. But with a win, Michigan was able to get to 13, and then that somehow puts St. Cloud at 14. If Michigan would have won in regulation, Michigan would be up to 10. So it was a big choke job for them to not win in regulation, having a 3-goal lead coming into the third period. But for some reason, we wanted to root for Michigan to win that game, and they did. So that helps the Huskies. But yeah, it's this. We've talked about it the last couple of weekends, but just this, now that we see that UMass and Providence have solidified a little bit their position, it's still 10-18, let's say, with New Hampshire kind of their hopes dwindling by the weekend. But really, them at 14, New Hampshire at 14%, it's really anyone between that and 10. We're all fighting over 5, at most 5 at-large spots, and maybe less if there's upsets in the conference tournaments. So yeah, it's gonna go down to the wire, and it's fun. I love to see the horse race here, how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Let's hop over the women. Sees their season end at the hands of Minnesota Duluth. We put the over/under at 7.5 total
I did think
goals.
Of this. Yes.
And sure enough, 7 were scored. But shockingly, 5 in the first game. Ahola got the start there on the first game on Friday, and I think the score, the 5-0 score makes it maybe a little bit worse than I think Ahola played. I think kind of the defense, I think the team kind of gave up once. And I kind of thought it too. Like once it got to like 2-0, it's like you're not going to score 3 on Duluth, and especially the squad. The squad has had such a hard time scoring goals, that getting back from a 2-0 deficit was going to be almost impossible. And so that was, and sure enough, the second period. 2 goals were scored, in the first 10 minutes or so of that. And then after that, I was like, Duluth really owned that second period anyway. And even the third period while they were up anyway. Yeah, not a lot of push for St. Cloud at that time towards the end of the game. Avery Myers ended up breaking her arm and then still played, or at least was still listed. I don't know. I can't remember how much time she actually got on the ice on Saturday's game. I don't remember hearing her name called too many times, but I did watch her TikTok "Get Ready with Me" with
it'll make an interesting next episode.
Yeah, she did say. One thing I did find interesting is that during the episode with Billy Hangen on the Dump and Change podcast, Billy did ask how, where do you see this podcast? What do you see for this podcast in the future? And they said, well, we're definitely going to do this next year, which kind of caught me a little bit by surprise because they're both seniors. And then in the Get Ready With Me, they both said they're undecided about taking their 5th year. So JoJo might be coming back Avery Myers in the fourth line, so that's not as much of, when it comes to the scoring side of it, which again, what St. Cloud's really lacking. But JoJo coming back, who I thought played pretty well, or really well, I would think, even on Friday or on Saturday's game. But again, a 2-0 deficit, you're not going to crawl back out of that against this Duluth team. So season ends up going out, and again, that's 250 minutes of hockey at Amsoil for the women that resulted in 0 goals total.
Nothing.
So I guess
not
I can
going to win many
Adelsky
games
here.
That way.
I'll put that right here. Adelsky, what do you think what do you think you should have done this weekend?
Yeah, but we got to score.
Yep, I agree.
Let's hope we can retire that. Well, we don't need to retire that sound effect or that sound bite, but let's hope we don't hear that in a post-game interview next year. We could start there.
Well, not when you're going to have Delmonico on the ice.
We think, and I'm not 100% sure she exists. So,
but yeah, there's Delmonico.
Frustrating. I mean, first weekend of the year, 0-4, a 0-point weekend combined for both the women and the men.
Mm-hmm.
This is sad, and it's sad because this is the end of the season for the women's team. And it is frustrating because where they were positioned after the first half and the momentum you had created after that first half, and then for it to end the way it did, sort of with a thud here in the last month, and just the offense completely drying up, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. Like, you flip those two halves of the year. You have the second half in the first half of the year, but then you end the season the way that you ended the first half. We're talking a whole different tune. Yeah. But as it shook out, I mean, yeah, it's now that we're in the off season for the women's team, it's reasonable to speculate to what the team's going to look like next year. And you're mentioning the Dump and Change co-hosts both having a fifth year available to them if they'd like to take it. You can say the same thing with the Hola as well. Has a fifth year available. We've got the PWHL now, but I think it's a little bit different than the men's side, where the pro prospects are a little bit more limited. So you'd feel like I would feel confident there's at least one of those two goalies is going to return. I believe they've got a good goaltender prospect in the pipeline too. You may have brought her up before. Don't have the name on me, but I feel like Adelsky has brought in a good goaltending prospect since he's been here. So even if both leave, it might not necessarily mean we're SOL, but the makeup of who's coming back will dictate, I think, Adelsky's movement in the portal, which we've mentioned was quite active this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I would expect that again this offseason again, but that's largely based on how much you lose and who decides to take their fifth year. Gentry's in that boat as well. So that'll probably be the first step. And then filling out the roster with other transfers, and then recruits like your girl, Delmonico. Could see if she's alive. But it'll be fun to see how active they are in the portal, and if they are sort of in the realm of possibility for some higher end prospects.
Yeah.
We'll get to this in the next few weeks, I'm sure, as the dust settles. I kind of want to see how the rest of the women's tournaments, conference tournaments, and then the NCAAs play out here. And obviously there's not going to be any transfer portal movement until after the NCAAs. But once that season gets started, then we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. But there's good talent to be had there. I mean, we see this from the men's side too. And a lot of times it's top scorers, good players, good offensive players from the lesser leagues looking for a step up into the WCHA or the ECAC if they want to stay on the East Coast. You see a player like Kiara Zanin from Ohio State last year. Penn State's, I think, top scorer, if not, I think she's had a 40-point year for them. Going to Ohio State, I think, in terms of wanting to step up in competition, you'd think that St. Cloud at least put themselves on the map this year, that they're a contender and they're a team on the rise, and they're a team that really, you're a player like Kiara Zanin, someone in that position, might be an attractive program to step into and perhaps be a difference maker in making this team into a tournament team for the first time in program history. You just look at how the season played out. We don't have the benefit of a customizer in the pairwise. You, thankfully, were able to find that the BC blog built from scratch a tournament predictor. You can't go back and customize results from the regular season, but are able to play around with that a little bit. But I'm wondering, the February results against the Gauntlet were disappointing, but I wonder how much of an effect, not just from the pairwise, but just mentally as a team, the losses to Mankato and St. Thomas had. I mean, if you would have won those games, the real world effect, at least in the conference standings, would have been quite different. Yeah. Because with those 6 points against those bottom feeder teams, you're at 47 points and you finish ahead of Duluth. And that's not even assuming that the rest of the results went the same way that they did. I think there might have been a demoralization effect after losing those games going into the true gauntlet, the schedule. If you're ahead of Duluth going into that last series against Duluth up at Amsoil in the regular season, maybe you score a goal like in that series and win one of those games, like for real, not just in a shootout. It could have all played out a lot differently if those games were flipped. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. You can't go back and do that, but that just illustrates how close this team was. A couple of results to lower level competition, the whole season could have played out a little bit differently. And you win those 2 games, perhaps you're in that 8 spot in the pairwise, kind of where Duluth is now. Whereas it looks, using that tool that the BC blog put out, with Duluth's sweep over St. Cloud and Quinnipiac's getting swept against Cornell, looks like that's clinched a spot for Duluth in the NCAAs. Even if they lose their first game to Ohio State here this weekend, Duluth I'm talking about, because Quinnipiac can't make up any ground because they don't have any games left in front of them, Duluth will finish ahead of Quinnipiac, assuming that whoever engineered that pairwise predictor knows their stuff. It looks like Duluth hopped Quinnipiac, which I think that's more satisfying in terms of it's 4-4 with the WCHA and the ECAC. For it to play out to the extent that the ECAC would have had 5 teams in the field to 3 for the WCHA, it just seems weird. Yeah. Obviously, the ECAC is a great league too, but WCHA, those top 3 teams, the top 2. I mean, the Gophers, that was the biggest shock of the weekend.
That's true.
With Mankato beating the Gophers on
Friday.
And giving them a decent game. I mean, it was a 1-0 game late in the game on Sunday in game 3. But Gophers able to win that series, the only series to go 3 games. So we got the Gophers against Wisconsin, and then we've got Duluth and Ohio State. And I think Duluth can still improve they might be able to move up to 7. Obviously, if they win the conference tournament, I think they would move into 7th over St. Lawrence, especially if they lose too. It's possible that they could move up even one more spot, but it looks like they're clinched into as an at-large at the very least. You were correct with Penn State over Mercyhurst, 1-0 thriller in the title game. So congratulations and F you That's our first tournament team of the 2024 postseason madness. Penn State Nittany Lions. A huge pair of upsets in the Newha. You're thinking Avery Farrell may have made the wrong move because she moves from Franklin Pierce, transfers to St. Cloud. Franklin Pierce, who had to upset your girls, Sacred Heart, last weekend, just to get in.
I don't think I've ever claimed the women's team for Sacred Heart.
It's the whole university. If you're for the men's team, you're for the whole athletic department.
Just de facto, you're the whole kit and caboodle, huh?
It's probably fair to say they're the favorite Pioneers. They're more cherished Pioneers in your heart than Denver is. Sacred Heart.
Gotcha.
I'm saying. But so Franklin Pierce, the only road team to win in the quarterfinals last weekend, they go into St. Anselm. Excuse me, they go into LIU, the Newha's conference champ from last year. LIU had lost only 2 games in conference this year. Franklin Pierce upsets them. Stonehill also upsets, goes on the road and upsets St. Anselm. So that's Stonehill hosting Franklin Pierce for the Newha title, and their auto bid. I don't think anybody had that. It's the biggest shocker that Franklin Pierce had since the 1852 Democratic Convention. So good on the Ravens. And because we're Avery Farrell fans, maybe I'll just speak for myself. I'm rooting for Franklin Pierce in that game. But then he got Stonehill too, like a terrible men's team. But if the women can make the tournament, that'd kind of be a fun story. So I guess, because LIU lost, we're just rooting. It's just chaos, and we're happy with whoever wins that one. But so some surprises there.
I guess I don't know if you know, or if I just have to do a little bit more research, because I'm looking at the bracket. Because you were talking about how, Duluth and their positioning. So I am looking at ahead for them a little bit as to where favorably they'd be. Because I'd imagine they wouldn't want to play the number 1 seed. But I only see that they only seed 1 through 5. And are the rest kind of draws?
No, I think they just go by chalk. It's what they did last year. So it would be 6-11. That would be the matchup, and the winner of that would play the 3 seed.
The 3? Okay.
To go to the Frozen Four. And then it'd be 7-10. The winner of that would play the 2 seed.
Gotcha.
And then the 8-9 would play the 1 seed.
All right. So
and then the 4 and 5 would just be the 4 and 5 play each other. Play-in game for that. It's stupid. Yeah. They have 11 teams instead of 12. Yeah. So, so if Duluth's going to hang on to 8, they would be in Ohio State's bracket. Ohio State's locked up the 1 seed. It doesn't matter if they lose in the WCHA tournament. They're the 1 seed. So, I mean, if Duluth, they got to play Ohio State this weekend, so they can get some practice playing them, I suppose. They haven't beaten Ohio State in 4 tries this year. I mean, they've beaten Wisconsin. So I guess in that regard, you'd rather face Wisconsin. The only way to do that is probably beating Ohio State and then hoping St. Lawrence loses. The SCSU tournament this weekend should be great too. I mean, all 4 of those teams in that conference are all tournament teams.
Yeah.
And they're still jockeying for seeding position. I'm really rooting for Clarkson. I want Clarkson and St. Lawrence to be in the same bracket because those are the 2 North Country big rivals, Northern New York. So imagine like a Clarkson versus St. Lawrence. They're like 12 miles apart, something like that. Imagine that matchup with the Frozen Four on the line. I mean,
nice.
At a campus rink. This is what we should want, I think, in college hockey.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of rooting for that. And that's still on the table based on how the results shake out. And mentioned like that Colgate, Minnesota. I mentioned that last weekend with Minnesota, with them losing to Mankato, drops them to 5. So that if it holds like that, Colgate, they're the top seed in that ECAC bracket. So, I mean, Colgate could technically hop Clarkson, be the 3 seed. But it's looking, especially, I mean, it's a pretty wide gap. In the NPI, I was just seeing this too. The women's pairwise is a little different. They don't use RPI, they use NPI. It's a slightly different formula. From what I can gather, it's a slightly simplified formula. They don't use, like in the RPI, it's your record, your common opponents, and then your common opponents' opponents, and then your common opponents' opponents. The NPI only takes the first two of those, so it's a little simplified. Just to say that the jump there is
Inception,
right? The jump from 5 to 4 is sizable. So I think Minnesota, even if, I mean, I suppose if they win the Frozen Faceoff, they might be able to jump them, but I doubt it. It's looking like Minnesota
doesn't really matter. They just play each other. It's whoever gets the late line change.
Well, and home ice. It would be the difference between playing at Colgate or playing at Ritter for the Gophers. I would, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I'd say whoever gets that home game is who I would think would be the favorite there.
I don't think the Gophers are gonna. I would take either ECAC team.
Oh yeah,
over the Gophers.
Seeing them play against
even at Ritter.
Yeah, that's why seeing them play against Mankato this weekend. Even if they have the home game, I'd probably take the ECAC team over them.
And that's either Clarkson or Colgate.
Yes, I don't think Cornell, even if they
think Cornell can,
even if they win the tournament. I mean, I said it's closer. Cornell's closer to Minnesota from 6 to 5 than Minnesota is from Colgate at 4. I haven't checked out those probabilities, but I suppose it's possible that Cornell could hop Minnesota, which would then force Minnesota to play a second game. They would play the 11th seed. They'd play the Newha winner in that scenario. And then they'd still have to go. They'd still have to play Clarkson or Colgate most likely in their building. Yeah, and so we've got that Newha. The Penn State's likely going to be the 10th seed, and then the 9th seed will be the Hockey East winner. And we've got the Final Four there. Those are all conference. Ritter is the only quote unquote neutral site, even though it is a campus site. Like the others are all just campus rinks. So the Hockey East will play their semifinals in the middle of the week, I think on Wednesday. And then the winner of those will play at the campus rink of the winner. I would say it's likely going to be Northeastern and UConn in that title game. And then whoever wins that game will slot into the 9th seed. If one of those lower seeds in Hockey East, like UNH or BC, if they end up winning it, they could be the 10th seed and Penn State could slot into the 9th seed. So unlike the men's side, we kind of knew it's just a lot of less guesswork with the women's side. There's not that group of 8 teams battling out for 4 or 5 spots that we mentioned with the bubble on the men's side. The group of contenders are fairly limited, and with 5 less teams in the field, it's just a little bit more streamlined and not as complicated in terms of all the scenarios. But still, we'll have a field. I don't know if I should do a predict the field little mini-sode for Saturday. I suppose I could. Again, I don't think it's going to be all that. You don't really have to move. We don't have hosts to keep in mind. It's just not a ton of potential movement. You just, because you got campus rinks, you just slot the top 4 seeds and then you
slot them in.
Tell which teams go where. So I'm wondering too, like if there is, I'm kind of curious, like if you have Clarkson at 3 and St. Lawrence at 7, meaning St. Lawrence would be in the 2 seed bracket. If they say, hey, we want to have the 2 local teams in the same regional, I wonder if they would put that. I haven't followed. This is the first year that I've really followed women's hockey very closely. Yeah. I don't know if that's something that the committee would do. I wouldn't be against it, but I just, from my history with the women's side, and we've only had the 11-team field for 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we just don't have a ton of history and what the committee has done in the past. So be interesting to see how exactly it all shakes out.
So the Huskies end, shoot, I just had it here. 17-17
and 2.
Ended up being their record. So just shy of their record for most wins in a season with 18.
Couldn't even get a winning season out of it either.
No,
frustrating.
Nope. Ending on a 2-10-1 stretch kind of makes that a little bit difficult. But again, I kind of want to go back to, we've been critical at times of them, but having these expectations and standards is a heck of a step in the right direction that Adolski has taken this program. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do next and what next season is going to come by. Bummer kind of had to go out this way, with just the lack of goal scoring and excitement in that instance towards the end of the season. But hey, that's hockey for you. Especially in women's hockey, you're going to get some stout goaltending. So, well, I'm really excited to see what the team's gonna kind of have in store. And as we get portal or transfer news or notes, we'll be here to break down all that information for you. So, but it'll be interesting to see. If I were to quiz you right now, or if you were just to kind of take a guess, are you going WCHA or ECAC for the title?
Who's going to win the NCAA championship?
Yep.
WCHA.
Okay. I'll take ECAC.
Really?
I'll take Clarkson, I guess.
Okay.
So
I think we're going to, if it stays at 1-2 with Ohio State and Wisconsin, I think that's going to be your title game again. Be a rematch.
Yeah.
But we'll see. The Dump and Change podcast made reference to this several podcasts ago, but because I think they brought up the new Ha, and it sounded like they weren't huge fans of the fact that they got auto bids.
Correct.
I mean, they're at 11 right now, St. Cloud. They had been at 10 for weeks. UConn passed them finally. Maybe we can talk about, let me know if this is too big of a topic to bring up now, but the idea of the auto bids and the 11-team field, are we okay with that? Are we salty that the Huskies are technically in the top 11, but they're going to be outside the pairwise or outside the field because of the auto bids, knocking them out lower in pairwise quality teams? It's a more of a big picture topic because you can say the same thing about the men's side with the Atlantic hockey teams knocking out more higher and pairwise teams than that with their auto bids. But I found that interesting when they're well aware of the rules and how the pairwise and the auto bids work. And so, at this point, I guess it's easier to swallow being them at 11th rather than 9th and having been to be the first team out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think also being, going 2-10-1 doesn't help your case that
you flip the two halves and you end the season on such the high note that you did in the first half, then it would really sting. Because then you're like, oh God, we want to bring back the last 20 games metric in pairwise. Remember that they got rid of? Because that would have put us over the top. But maybe we can touch on that next week when we do have the field, just to see what the split in NPI is between Franklin Pierce, let's say, who is 32nd out of 44 teams.
Jeez.
They might be, and Stonehill's there at 30. So you're going to have a team from the pairwise 30s, most likely, in the field. And there's going to be who's ever 9th. Quinnipiac is going to be there at 25, 11, and 1. And they're going to
have that on the men's side, too.
Right.
So,
yeah. Arizona State's going to be sitting at home. And it's such an injustice.
Yep, exactly. They scored 16 goals on an opponent. That should alone get them a tournament to bid right there. Much less their 20-some wins that they have.
I heard an interview. He was on the Powers was on the CHN show. He was doing some cleanup on aisle 5 about the little brouhaha they had up in Alaska.
You need to do some PR work there. He's like, Powers, you got to get out there.
Oh, and Woden was a happy grocery store manager, giving him a broom there and helping him out. But Powers all about, we're at 21 wins. Our school record's at, I think 23 said, and we got 4 games left. We really want to break the school record for wins in a season. And hey, 24 wins in the season, that's really something. That's really tough to do. It's like, well, I mean, literally not that tough to do with that schedule. So it's all context there, bud.
And hey, next season he might have a chance to shut us all up. If he puts up a
24 win season next year,
yeah,
we're not making fun of him.
Then he can put it on his NCAA tournament resume.
Well, we should be prepared for them to hang a banner. 24 win season. 24 in 24.
For 24 and 24.
For 2024.
It's got a ring to it.
It does. Don't give them any good ideas.
Oh, that about does her for this episode. So, thank you as always for listening. You can find me at Twitter or on X at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew, where can they find you?
You can email me at Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. Send me an email.
Perfect. Quick question, as we were talking a while ago about crosswords and crosswordies and whatnot. My wife and I were kind of having a discussion. Like, do you have a set pattern when you go through crosswords?
What do you mean?
Like when you go through, or do you just like see the ones
when I write them, or when
you solve them?
Solve them.
Yeah.
I have to be honest. I haven't solved a standard crossword. It's got to be at least a year.
Oh, really?
I solve variety crosswords almost exclusively now. Them or cryptics. My technique, I kind of start at one across and go from there.
Okay.
One across, then I do the downs. If I really want to speed solve, it's been a while, but start at the top 3 because then you can get the first letter for the downs. You can kind of go from there. But I don't really have great tips. I was a pretty good speed solver. I was top 20 one year, but
nice.
It's mostly just I would be out of practice now because I haven't done it in a while. But
Teresa always gets annoyed when we're trying to solve, because we got like the New York Times app and whatnot. So we'll go, like, she has a very strict pattern of all the acrosses all the way, and then all of the downs. So to make sure she sees every clue, and then she'll start looking at quadrants and kind of go from there. Whereas, like, even if we got the across and I'm going through and I see a down that I know the answer to, I'm going to fill it out like right away. Cause I was like, hey, I know that one. And it just annoys her. So I was just wondering if, since you're the aficionado / wordsmith when it comes to crosswords and whatnot, if
I was to give any tips, I would say, like, I feel like it's easier once you have the first letter in an entry. So if you get like that one across, the 3 top across, the first 3 across clues will be the first 3 that go across the top row. If you can get those, then you have the first letter for all those 13 down answers. That should give you a good head start with your brain if you have the first letter. That's, again, assuming if you're able to solve the across clues. But try to get the ones with the first letter. A lot of people say start with like the 3-letter clues, the 3-letter entries, because those are relatively, you see them a lot. So you kind of can, they have familiar clues a lot, and those can be good entry points. Obviously, like the theme entries, if there's a theme to it, the longer entries, you're not going to get those just by looking at the clues. So don't even look at the theme answers, the long answers right away, because you're never going to get a 15-letter answer with no letters in place.
Especially
you kind of got to build those out.
Is a pun,
right? Or some wordplay involved, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's interesting because I really haven't, like I said, I'm a little out of practice with it. But the biggest piece of advice is just to do a crap ton of crosswords, and then you'll just do a ton. Then it's pattern recognition. If you see a clue and it's got 7 words in the clue, but one of them says cookie in it, all you need to know it's going to be Oreo. Like, so seriously, that's kind of what the tricks of the trade are. Like, you can strip away kind of the BS that's added to the clue and just reduce it to its essence, and you get what it's probably going to be. Gotcha. It's a good. But you'll only really get that if you do gobs and gobs of puzzles. Sure. Which there's only so much time in the day, and being a champion crossword solver, it does not bring you fame and fortune. No. So as shocking. There's that. I thought so. You should talk to the RPI fan that I brought up, the RPI fan. We were talking this weekend because he's won the tournament 7 times or so. Jeez. Did you ever see the wordplay documentary that came out about 20 years ago? I have. He's featured in it. Oh. He's the RPI student in it. It's a good movie. It's a good documentary, even if you don't like crosswords. It's quality. But that's the RPI fan that I text and talk to more often. We were swapping sob stories this weekend because he's like, RPI finished last place in ECAC. And then I'm like, well, yeah, chin up, because my team just lost by a combined 9 goals this weekend. Goals? 9 times. Then he's like, do you want to switch teams? And I'm like, do you want to switch degrees? And he's like, well, you might have a point there. So, but yeah, if you really want some tips, hit up Tyler Himman. He knows his stuff. He turns out he's a college hockey fan. He's a long-suffering RPI college hockey fan. Sure thing. Just also, since we're on the subject, I think rebuses are cheating. So Thursday crosswords I usually stay away from. I've heard that before. I've written a couple of those. They're not my favorite. I think they are kind of overdone, but they can be clever. I'm not going to completely dismiss them, but I've done a double rebus before, where there's the crossing entries, like the down is 2 different letters and the across is 2 different letters. Oh, see, that's not. It's art. It's art. It's garbage, is what it is. It's cheating. So you might not like it, but it's not cheating. That's the wrong word to use. Just you don't like it. No, I don't like cheaters, so I'll say that. So, well, one across here for this is oomph, as that's how this weekend went. So we'll look forward to a sweep. Fingers crossed for the Huskies, or at least some type of better results. So until next time, go Huskies. Woo!